I've always had a goal of making $100,000 off of properties per year. Now, spoiler alert, if you saw the thumbnail to this, my Geodome does not make $100,000 a year, but I think it's a really good investment. I believe that quirky, unique, and really kind of fun experience type of properties are recession-proof, make more money, and are just a much more enjoyable experience that I think more people are seeking as time goes on. All of those things combined means that you as an investor have a higher ROI, return on investment. That's why when I think about real estate investing, that's a natural asset class that I'm a little bit more gravitated towards. So in 2020, my partner and I bought a 1-acre parcel in the mountains of Idaho. It's on a steep decline. It's really pretty crazy, but it had these massive boulders that we fell in love with and thought were so cool and gave the property a really unique, different characteristic and feel. So we put in an offer for $35,000 and our offer was accepted. This is right before the pandemic boom, so that price is actually, you can't find any lots for that price in that area, but at that time it was a good deal, so we moved on it. So first and foremost, I thought we were gonna do a cute small cabin, kind of like a den cabin. If you haven't seen them, they kind of look like this. They're beautiful, they're cute, they're very modern and aesthetic, and that's like the vibe that I am personally attracted to. But we ran into our first real issue. Getting utilities to this property was hella expensive and we could not afford it. We're talking like $50,000 just for electricity, and that does not include your septic system or your well. And in that area, the wells are at least 450 to 500 feet deep. Remember, we're on top of a mountain, so you have to go quite a ways down to get water. So all of this stuff was very cost prohibitive, so we had to go back to the drawing board and think a little bit differently. And that's when we came across geodomes. A geodome is a temporary structure like a tent, and it's very, very cool. They're really unique. They've got like kind of an igloo shape and a huge panoramic window that is so cool and so magical. So when we came across these structures, we thought for sure this would be a good option. They were fairly inexpensive, they were portable, and they were cool and unique, and that's something that was very important to us. So we got to work with building our Geodome glamp site. To give you context into this process, I'm gonna walk you through the different phases that we personally went through for our Geodome glamping site. Phase 1 is all about planning and patience. Our initial budget was $50,000. This was not including our land, but we thought $50,000 should get us through the door, get us up a structure, and it should be like a really cool kind of turnkey. So 50 grand to be turnkey. The next thing we had to work on was the site plan. A site plan is basically just a plot map. It tells the city, the county, exactly where everything's gonna be placed, so you can see if you have enough space on the lot to do exactly what you wanna do. Sometimes even though 1 acre seems like a lot, when you factor in things like a septic system and a well and a house, you may not actually have enough space on the lot legally to do that. So that's what your site plan does. It helps you kind of just lay everything out and see exactly where things need to be placed, your setbacks, how far from the road different structures can be, your sidelines, all of that kind of stuff. That is your site plan. So we started creating our site plan, and honestly, it was a little bit easier than we expected because the massive boulders kind of told us exactly where we had to build. It was something where we didn't really want to tear the big rocks out. That's kind of that cool aesthetic piece of the property we liked. So we decided to just keep those in and work around them. Now, when I say you have to be patient, in a mountain climate, there is a ton of snow, like no shit, right? But there's so much snow that you have to work with that part of your timeline needs to be accounted for snow melt. Basically from November to December, all the way through March, April, we're snowed out. We couldn't get into the property. We couldn't continue on with our build, and there was no chance of even getting an excavator in there. So it was just one of those things where you just had to like kick back and be patient, which killed my heart. It was very hard. The other part of this phase 1 is that anytime you take on a project, always plan for this project to be twice as long as you expect it to be. For us personally, I run my business full-time. Tony has a full-time job. So the only time we could really dedicate to working on the property was on weekends. And for us, that was great. So we would drive up on a Friday night. Sometimes we'd stay the night. Usually it was drive up on Saturday. It's 2 hours away from where I live. So each time we had to kind of come back and forth because we needed to go to like Lowe's and Home Depot and do some of the lumber runs. So we weren't really able to stay the night up there, although that would have saved us money and time. we just had to go back and forth because we really needed supplies and materials. So that was kind of a pain in the butt. We did this over a year and a half. Again, snow melt. So you don't really have a ton of time to work on the property because you're snowed out during a set window of time. The other part of planning that was a little bit tricky is our property is completely off the grid. I already mentioned utilities being very expensive. So we had to figure out ways for where do people go to the bathroom? Do we have any type of cooking? How do we power lights, that kind of stuff? Solar is not great in the mountains where we are, so it was a little bit tricky, but we had to come up with solutions for that. We have a porta potty that we rent. We have a small generator that's solar paneled. There's like 2 solar panels, and that's how the generator gets charged. And we have 1 light that it runs. We also have a wood stove for heat. There's no air conditioner. The Geodome has these little cross breeze flaps that you roll up, and that helps a little bit. But as a whole, it is still a tent. It gets very hot in the summer and very cold in the winter. And I have lost way too much sleep over that. Phase 2 was permitting and engineering for us. This was another hiccup in the project, and I think it's probably very common. We were told that for our deck structure, so the foundation that the dome sits on, had to be engineered per our county requirements. So for us, we hired an engineering company that we were told 3 to 4 weeks turnaround time for the deck engineering. It actually ended up being 8 weeks. Now during that 8 weeks, you really can't keep building the deck. You can't dig your footers. You can't do any of that stuff yet because A, you don't know how deep you're digging or how wide, and B, you can't break ground until the city approves of your plans. So it was kind of a pain in the butt, but that engineering piece really did push us out a little ways, but it's the way it goes. You have to do it and it has to be safe. So that was something we just had to navigate. Once that part is in place, then you submit your permit, and we went through the process of getting inspections and all of that stuff every step of the way. This was by far one of the largest foundations I've ever personally built. In fact, even the inspector was kind of telling us this is more of a house foundation than a deck. And it kind of did feel that way in a lot of ways. It was a ton of concrete. It was a lot of work. But you know what? We learned a lot. And sometimes that's all you can ask for. So phase 3 for us was all about building. So this includes the deck itself, stairs so you don't fall on your butt when you walk down the hill. This includes some really fun pathways, a fire pit area that is like, mwah, it's so beautiful. You'll see, it's so, so cool. And one of my favorite projects was a chevron deck. I saw this on Pinterest and I immediately was like, I have to figure out how to recreate this. I think it turned out pretty good. What do you think? Here's a picture. I mean, I'm pretty proud of myself. During this time as well, while we were waiting for our engineering documents to come back, we decided to build a sauna. So a sauna is so cool, and in the mountains, in the winter, it's a nice little feature to add. Since we couldn't have a hot tub, it was either hot tub or sauna, and that was the only thing we could offer because we don't have water or electricity. So it was a really good feature, and honestly, it's been great. It's been a huge hit with guests, so we built that from the ground up. Which leads me perfectly into phase 4, which was setting up the dome. Now the dome itself has to sit on top of, yes, a deck, but it also sits on top of a small elevated platform. Like think about like a 2x6 sitting this way. Your dome frame would sit on top of that. So the metal components sit on top of that board. So it keeps it off the deck so it doesn't just sit there and rot. Does that make sense? And in between those, you have different joists and insulation. So that's where you really insulate the heck out of the deck as much as you can. Even then, even though we insulated really well, it still is not enough. It's still hot, still cold, like it is what it is. We just have to figure that out at another time. But that was what the dome sat on. Once we had that completed, the dome frame went up quickly, like within a weekend we had it up. And it was kind of difficult. It's very, very order of operations. It felt like a puzzle. It's very specific about the way you put each of the poles on the hub. The PVC cover had to go on top of that. Now this cover is massive and very, very heavy. It took probably about 4 of us to get the cover hoisted over and get it kind of positioned. It was a very tedious process. I do not ever want to do this again, even though we will have to at some point when the dome cover kind of goes obsolete or gets damaged. But until then, it was a pain in the butt. So once you had that done, then you put in your window, and you could be done there, but if you need that extra layer of insulation, they have an insulation liner, which, hear me out. If you've ever put on a duvet and you think putting on a duvet is tough, a dome insulation liner is about 20 times as difficult. It's such a pain in the butt. It's heavy. You're kind of like trying to position everything. You're trying to strap it across the different poles and the struts. It's just a pain in the butt. It's not something I look forward to doing again, but it really does make a big difference with the heat and cooling. And then of course the fun stuff is decorating the interior. Initially we had our dome interior completely in a different layout. We had the bed up against a wall. In my head, this is how it was going to be. I was going to build like a fake wall, have the bed be there. That was going to be some little lanterns, some lights hanging off the sides. It was going to be a little kitchenette. It was going to be great. But when we were doing construction, we ended up staying the night up there one weekend, and we had our air mattress in the center of the dome looking out the window, and that's when I realized we had to switch everything. It was the most beautiful view. You could lay in we have a king size bed in there, but you could lay in the bed and look out and stargaze. And we're not talking like occasional stars, it's like a dark sky area, so the stargazing is so perfect. So we knew we had to rearrange, and I had to come up with an entirely new interior layout, which I'm sure was irritating to Tony, but hey, we made it work and it's even better now. So what's next? Phase 5. We've got all the build done. Now we're running the business. And I would honestly say that this is probably the most challenging portion of the entire build. Like this is it. This is where you either make money or you don't make money. All of that stuff before is just necessary, but now you can actually start hopefully making revenue. You got to manage a budget. We have to do bookkeeping. We have to do marketing, which is always tricky. We're about a month and a half into actually being publicly open. And so I'm learning a ton, and I'm trying to manage all of the expenses to the best of my ability. The other factor that I just had no idea what to expect was the snow maintenance. So the road is county plowed up to a certain point, and then we have to privately plow from where the county plow stops to our lot. And they come after every 4 inches roughly of snow. So each time they come, it's a $70 plow, and that stuff adds up, you know, it really does. And so snow maintenance and removal is something that we knew was gonna be a nightmare. It truly is. It's not fun. It's a pain in the butt, but you gotta do what you gotta do. The other hiccup that we came across when it comes to running the business is our caretaker. We found somebody who we adored. He was awesome. He was helping us with the turnover when we were doing our test guests, getting people just to come in, stay there, give us some feedback, that kind of stuff. And right before we had our public launch, he quit because he had some major health issues, which sucks because now you're looking at the custodial engineer. I am the caretaker. So in the meantime, I'm driving back and forth between Boise and the city that the dome is in and doing the turnovers. So it's like, but that is just part of running the business, and it's what I signed up for. I am actively looking for a caretaker, but I am hiring very slow because I want to make sure that I find the right person and not just a person. The other factor of running the business is guest communication, setting proper expectations. This is not a cabin experience, it's a camping experience. And so making sure that guests understand what that exactly means is so important and a little difficult because you want to tell them all the things, but you can't. So you only have to tell them what's the most important pieces. So what's next for us? More properties. Yes, I'm a little crazy. I enjoyed it. I thought this was a really fun experience. I got to combine my love for DIY and getting my hands dirty with real estate investing and creating a really amazing experience. It kind of checked all the boxes for me. So for this exact moment, that is the style of real estate investing I enjoy. In upcoming videos, I'm going to be breaking down each of these phases to give you some tips and tricks along the way. So if you choose to do a glamp site, I will help you to the best of my ability. Everywhere is a little bit different, but hopefully my experiences will help you if this is something that you are considering for your life. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for the next video.